Well, greetings, fellow movie club members, and welcome to this newest meeting. We call to order the new session of Movie Club. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. My name is John Campea, and Movie Club is where we get together once a week to just talk about our favorite movies of the past 25 years or so, give or take, roughly a little bit. This is what, our seventh week? Is this our seventh week already?
I think it might well
Sixth or seventh? Can't believe how long. It just feels like we just started this yesterday. But we've been having a lot of fun doing it, guys. And today is something special. Today we are talking about a movie that is celebrating its 50th anniversary this week.
The 24th.
The 24th. This week is celebrating its 50th anniversary. A movie that many people consider to be possibly the greatest film of all time. It's not my personal number one of all time, but a lot of cinephiles who've been movie fans for a very long time consider The Godfather maybe to be the greatest movie of all time. That or its sequel, The Godfather Part 2, which I'm sure we'll talk about sometime. So that's what we're here to talk about today, guys. And here's how it's going to go. Me, Robert, and Ray, we're going to talk a little bit about The Godfather in depth for a little bit. And then we're going to spend the balance of our meeting here together hearing from you guys. If you guys have a thought, observation, opinion, or question about The Godfather, and you'd like us to read that off, simply use the super chat in the YouTube feature there, and we will get to that once we've talked about it for a bit. And of course, joining me right over here is Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing?
John, I should mention that this is March 22nd, 2022, and the actual 50th anniversary is 2 days from now.
Yep.
March 24th, 1972 was when this movie first came out. It won the Best Picture of that year. And one of my favorite films. I'm so glad we're talking about it. Very excited.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The Godfather is the only film franchise where the original film and the sequel both won Best Picture at the Academy Awards.
I believe you are indeed correct.
Now, The Lord of the Rings, all three were nominated for Best Picture, but it wasn't until Return of the King that it won. Godfather 1, Godfather 2, both won, and Godfather 3 was also nominated for Best Picture. And we're here to talk about. And then also joining us over here, guy who didn't watch The Godfather until for his first time yesterday ever, Ray Orr is here to talk about The Godfather. Ray, how you doing?
You know what? I'm glad you brought up the 24th because Halo comes out that day too. So it's a big day for Paramount Plus because Paramount.
Oh my gosh, that's true.
Paramount has Godfather and Halo, so they might be having both things like.
You're right. And this week they released their beautiful 4K restoration on physical media. So we got Halo, Godfather coming out. They came off the re-release theatrically, where they put out their new restoration of this film.
You know what's funny is when I was searching for where I could watch this movie, all that came up at the top. Usually it tells you all the streaming services. At the top, it showed theater showtimes. Because it is like, so it's like, wait a second. I actually thought it was going to be on Paramount, but I guess they're not letting you watch it until later on in the month because it's in theaters.
It's in theaters.
So yeah, I had to purchase it on Apple TV. Not my first choice, but you know what? It was well worth it.
You know, I have a pattern that I'll usually rewatch the movie we're going to talk about on Movie Club the day, like after we're done the John Campea Show, before we do it the day of, right? Because I like to watch it fresh and go right into the show, right? And I'm sitting there watching The Godfather again today because it's been a good 3 or 4 years since I've seen it last. And every time I watch this movie, I'm always amazed. Like, I forget that I'm like, this movie is utter perfection. The movie is utter perfection. It's unbelievable. And, you know, one of my favorite things about being a movie fan is when I get people who've watched something like The Godfather for the first time, right? And then watching their eyes light up as they realize, holy crap, this movie influenced every movie I've ever seen. Like you start recognizing, oh, that's where these 40 movies got that from.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is where those other 200 movies got this from. And so on and so forth. And you just realize it's one of those like most influential films of all time. Rob, before we get into like detail stuff like that, just your general impressions of The Godfather.
Well, you know, I was telling you earlier that this is another one of those movies that I actually owned.
Right.
On Laserdisc for years, and I never got around to watching it. I just thought, okay, I need to acquire movies, whether I've seen them or not, I'll get around to watching them. And the first time I ever experienced Godfather 1 and 2, I watched them on disc over a long weekend. I watched them both over 3 times, 4 times each over the course of a Saturday and a Sunday. I was blown away by these films. And they were so engrossing from a storytelling standpoint. And, I learned later, John, that while it's set in the world of the quote-unquote New York Mafia post-World War II, Coppola had said, and I think this is why these movies are as engrossing as they are, is that he said, I saw these movies, Coppola, I'm paraphrasing, he said that he saw these movies as the story about a king and his 3 sons and the realm that they existed in. Sure, this is a mafia movie and Cosa Nostra and all of that. And there is everything that's going on is analogous to the real world. Johnny Fontaine is Frank Sinatra and Mo Green is Bugsy Siegel. So they used real history to inform the movie. But the idea that you're watching a Shakespearean timeless story about the idea of a king that could have lived in any time, who has 3 sons that each have strengths and weaknesses, and who is going to succeed him. And I think that's why this movie is so engrossing, is because not only on one hand you could say, oh, it's a mafia movie, but on the other hand, it is a timeless story about royalty and family and responsibility and honor and what does it mean to live a good life or a bad life. And it's so mythic, if you want to look at it that way. And I think all of those levels is what makes this film so rewatchable and so engrossing and so timeless.
Ray, you just watched it for the first time. I just want your before we go into the details, what were your quick first impressions?
I got to tell you, when I knew that we were doing this movie, I'm going to be completely honest here. I'm not going to BS anybody. I really dreaded it. I was like 3 hours. It's an older movie. They're forcing me. And what if I give up 3 hours of my day and I don't like it? I just won't be on movie club, but that's still 3 hours of my life that I just feel like I wasted. So I was sitting at home and I was like, when do I start this movie? I was doing some laundry. I was like, maybe I should just let it play so I could say I watched it. There's a part of me that actually thought about watching a quick thing on YouTube and just say I watched it. I'm being honest. This is my thought.
The Cliff's Notes.
Yeah, the cheating
YouTube
way.
Cliff's Notes.
And I was like, I can't do that. So I was like, should I play it through laundry? I was like, no, because I really want to give this movie a chance. So after I was done with everything, it was 10 p.m.
That's late to start.
And even Ryan came down. He's like, oh, wow, get ready for a long movie or whatever he said. I said, all right, I'll start it. And I'll be like, I'm probably going to end up falling asleep. This rental's going to be a waste. From the first scene on, just from what they were saying, I was sold. This story I was already in. And if it wasn't for damn being sleepy, I would have finished it in one sitting. I actually had to finish the last hour. I stopped it before I can even try to fall asleep because I was into it. I paused it. And then when I woke up doing the show work for today, I played it and I couldn't even do the work. I was just watching the whole time. That's why the work came in so late today.
Well,
here's what something I want to point out, though. That one of the interesting things about this movie that I noticed a couple of years ago was that the movie doesn't even really get started till about 30 or 45 minutes into it. The movie actually really starts after the producer wakes up and finds the head of the horse in his bed. One of the most iconic scenes in film history, by the way. So when he wakes up to find, and it's after that, immediately after that happens, you hear the, and then from outside the house, you hear the echoings, Then immediately it cuts to an interior office scene, and they're talking about Sollozzo wants a meeting. And that's the moment the movie starts. And then you realize what Coppola has done, though. If this movie had done what a lot of us like movies do, I know I do. I like a movie that just starts right away. Like we're right into it, right? But that's not appropriate for every movie. Francis Ford Coppola, what he did was he spent that first half hour, 45 minutes, however long it takes to get to the horse's head scene. He world builds. That's all he does. For the first little bit, he world builds because this is it. And it starts with that man pleading his petition to Don Corleone about what happened to his daughter and begging. And then we get to see the Don's basic attitude. Why do you show me such disrespect? When have you ever invited me, although I am the godfather to your children? If you had come to me in friendship, like why didn't you come? Like, so you start to understand this character right away, and they set up this the way this world functions. Then it goes through all that. The next guy gets into his office. We meet what's the big lug's
Luca
name?
Brasi.
Luca Brasi.
We meet Luca Brasi. Don Corleone, I am so grateful you invited me into your home on this the day of your daughter's wedding. Right? We get him, all that kind of stuff. And then after they go through all that, and then the singer kid comes in and he smacks him around. And
Johnny
like, what are you doing?
Act like a man.
Act like a man. All that kind of stuff. And then ultimately, then we see how the Don does business. Because he sends Tom. And by the way, we get a full understanding of the role and functioning of the consigliere and Tom there and what he does and how smooth is Tom. Talking to that producer out there, it's almost like Dalton from Roadhouse. Be nice. Be nice. That's
Why
Tom.
didn't you tell me what you work for Corleone, Tom?
Yeah.
He came out to be my favorite, I think, if not the favorite character of mine, but one of the top ones.
Oh,
Tom.
yeah, absolutely.
I love Tom.
Then we see what happens when you refuse Don Corleone, what happens. And then once all that world building is done, then we start our story. And like, to me, like just that opening scene is still one of the greatest opening scenes ever in movies.
Well, also, what it sets up is the first line of the movie. I believe in America.
Yeah.
You see Gordon Willis's photography and you see the Undertaker or whatever come out of the darkness and explain what happened to his daughter. But it immediately tells you that this movie is also about the immigrant experience, which is carried through to the rest of the
I went
other.
to the police
the
like
other
a
two
good
movies.
American.
I mean, and it's like you say, the world building. It's so really well done, and the way they lead up and introduce Michael. Michael's not in the beginning of this movie. You're waiting. Where's Michael?
We don't take the picture till Michael gets
he
here.
doesn't. And so they set up the idea that there is the pure as the driven snow son, the war hero, the academic,
the one they try to keep out of the family.
Family.
Yeah.
I mean, and introducing the prince, the pure blood prince. That nothing's gonna. The purebred prince is gonna be the one that leads us to. We're gonna go legit. He's going to become a lawyer. He's going to be out there in the real world, and anything that's that we get our hands dirty. Michael's not dirty. That's what Don Vito wants.
Yeah.
But I have a suggestion for anyone who hasn't watched it yet. If you do decide to watch it, my subtitles are on by accident, but I found that it really helped me get into the story. I don't know if it was just me, because if I didn't have them on, I wouldn't have read the part about his daughter, like what that guy did to his daughter.
Oh,
shut her jaw or whatever.
They had to wire her jaw.
Yeah, like she'll never be beautiful again. Because for me,
heart broke.
Because for me, that shows how great the acting is. That they were speaking so Italian that sometimes it was hard for me to understand what they were saying. Like,
see, for me,
accents.
it was just home life.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people still don't know. Like, my real name is Giovanni. I'm Italian. My father Pasquale, my grandfather Giovanni, who I'm named after. My great uncles Carlo Romolo Vincenzo Segallo. So I'm watching, when you watch this movie, like that, it rang so authentic because that was when people are sitting around the dinner table and that's it. I mean, that's life.
And Coppola, when he was trying to make this movie, the studio wanted movie stars. They didn't want Al Pacino. They didn't want Marlon Brando. And Coppola really went to bat, and he obviously himself is Italian. And there is an authenticity, John. I'm always banging on about verisimilitude, the quality of appearing real, being real. This movie, it feels almost like it's a documentary, that they just brought cameras with them to 1946 New York. I mean, there isn't a moment that doesn't look authentic in this film, except maybe one punch that James Caan misses when he's
fighting Carlo, when he's beating up Carlo.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he misses that by a country mile.
A country mile, and I would have hoped I would have hoped in the restoration maybe they would have fixed that.
Digitally fix that,
or different angles, a better angle.
Yeah, I mean, but other than that, the verisimilitude in this movie is you can smell the cannoli. You can taste the sauce in your mouth.
There's nothing glamorized in the film.
No.
Like even the violence, like even the gunfights, none of it feels slicked and choreographed. It's awkward and it's sometimes clumsy and it's just bang bang drop blah blah go, and just made it feel so gritty and real. And by the way, unless I forget to mention it, the music.
Oh,
Like every time, like there's certain pieces of music that will elicit in you all the emotions that the movie that music is from elicit in you, right? Maybe it's that Jurassic Park, ba, 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 like you feel it, right? But ba, 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 like you hear that, you just feel everything you felt watching The Godfather. And it's just so brilliant.
And I want to say, just to the director, his name Francis
Ford Coppola.
Coppola. I know there's been some things that he said about the movies I like, the effects. You know, I'm a big special effects guy. I always joke about story or whatever not being important. This is one of the rare movies where just the first few words I bought in. It was almost just like as a bit. It had the same effect as a big explosion. Like
Yeah.
I credit to the director. I when I heard the things he would say about, you know, the movies I like, I didn't. I understand completely. He's such a what work. This was a masterpiece, actually.
No,
On
really-
tour. He's an auteur.
It is the definite. This movie is like we throw. I think the word masterpiece. I think we're all guilty of throwing that word around a little too loosely and liberally. This is a masterpiece.
Yeah, and we're going to see it in the Paramount series The Offer.
Yeah.
But Coppola was constantly under, like, what's really interesting about this is at the time when Robert Evans ran Paramount, he was developing book projects that they would later turn into movies at the studio. So when Love Story was being written, that novel was being written under the auspices of Paramount. Same with The Godfather, Mario Puzo. And Puzo and Coppola were both working on the script together. And this was a battle. This wasn't like some director coming in and they just gave him carte blanche to do what he wanted. The studio wanted Robert Redford, Warren Beatty, you know, who later played Mo Green's part as Bugsy Siegel in Bugsy. But, you know, this was not an easy film to make at all. And I think that push-pull, that creative, you know, and Coppola had to be on his A game all the time because he was afraid of getting fired. Al Pacino was afraid of getting fired. It was not the greatest way to make a film, but that tension, I think, added to what was going on. And, you know, like you talk about, Ray, you were in from the beginning. The stylization of Gordon Willis's photography, the dark, you know, he was the Prince of Darkness, they called him, the cinematographer. And when you see that guy come out, like The Undertaker come out, I believe in America, it's stylized. You're like, what is this? Is not just some normal movie. You're watching something heightened and elevated.
I'm telling you, from what normally is an explosion, and I'm like, let's go. This just had a silhouette, like the side view of Marlon Brando and the guy pleading with him, telling him a story. And just
Drama.
those, it was just words. And I bought into those beginning words, and I was in from that moment on, which is great to me because I've never, that's never happened. Or it's hard for me to buy into a movie when you just open with words and two people
this
saying,
did it.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about some of the characters here. And I remember my buddy, a buddy of mine who I watched The Godfather. I've at least 5 times watched The Godfather with somebody who had never seen it yet before. And it's always a great experience. But I remember this one buddy of mine watched it and like it ends, the door closes as Kay looks hopelessly into the room as the door closes. My buddy goes, you know, and a couple of times in my life, I've had somebody say, you don't want to be the Fredo. Oh, you're the Fredo. And people getting mad when they're being called the Fredo. Now I know what that means. Yeah, let's talk about Fredo. I feel, other than Kay, who I feel worst for, I feel worst for Fredo. Because Fredo, he is what is in Tropic Thunder? Simple Jack? Fredo is Simple Jack, right? There's nothing remarkable about him. He's just a kid who loves his dad. And he's in this world that he is not suited for whatsoever. And they're always just trying to find a spot for him. And ultimately, we know what happens to him. But we won't talk about that because Ray hasn't seen The Godfather Part 2. But I just feel so bad for him, especially like when Michael goes to Vegas to see everybody and he's doing the best he can, but he realizes he's pissed off Mo. He's pissed off his own brother. He's never done anything right. Like from the moment, and I just can't help but feel bad for him, through that he is, but that's him. He was born into this family and his father loves him and his brothers love him but he doesn't really have a place in the family.
No.
He's not particularly gifted.
You're absolutely right. And what I think is really interesting is that these two guys that are in the family, Fredo and Sonny, they're both ill-equipped to be where they're supposed to be. I mean, Sonny is strong. Sonny is impetuous. Sonny is a man of action, but he's not a man of thinking and not a man of heart.
He's impulsive.
Yeah,
Somewhat.
super impulsive. Yeah.
And as Vito says, he was a bad Don. You know, and yet Michael, who is supposed to be the shining beacon that's going to lead the family ultimately to legitimacy, because he's the smartest and the most capable and the most ruthless. He ends up being the most ruthless. He ends up doing what a son does, protect his father. Right. And, you know, he's there at a time where he's ill-equipped to be where he is, but his father has been abandoned, and he's standing outside, and they are coming to kill his dad. You know, and in part of the hero's journey is in a way, it's instead of becoming a hero, he kind of is in a way, actually, in this movie. He saves his dad's life. And in doing so, he sees the peril that his family faces. And he does what any son must do.
Protect your family.
Protect your family. And you know, we talk about Fast and Furious. Here's a film where I think the philosophy of the family, that's another reason this movie I think is so good, because it is ultimately all about a family first and foremost. Never tell anybody outside the family what you're thinking.
Oh, that's such a
You know, you never
side with anybody against the family.
Absolutely.
Ever again.
Ever again. And this is something that I remember. There's a movie called Grand Canyon that Lawrence Kasdan directed. I think Steve Martin plays a movie producer in the movie, and he says all the great lessons in life are learned from The Godfather.
Well, you know, one of the other brilliant things about this film is that, and you got to watch it a couple times to really appreciate it. You mentioned Michael as the hero. He's really not a hero.
No.
He's a bit of a dick. He starts off shiny, but he's corrupted so quickly. And I mean, just case in point is this, and this is a part of The Godfather people don't talk about. After he kills Sollozzo and the police captain, and he has to go to Italy, the bruise is still fresh on his cheek. And he's already cheating on Kay. Like he just left Kay behind. He goes off to Italy. He ain't there that long when he decides, oh, I just saw a pretty girl. Marries this girl, never responds to any of Kay's messages, phone calls, anything. Girl gets killed, moves home like nothing, says, hey, Kay, I've been thinking about you, baby. Oh, you were always on my mind, baby. Right? Like, he's kind of a dick. He is kind of a dick.
Well, I think, though, that when he kills the police captain, I think that over the course of the three movies, Michael loses his soul. You know,
I think we see in the first movie.
He was I think he doesn't lose his soul until the second. He does something in the second movie where his soul is taken away completely, and you know what that is.
Yeah, I still kind of feel like the settling of all family business at the end of this first movie is kind of that moment that he gave in. Like, there's a beautiful moment where the priest is asking him, as all these murders are being conducted on his breath, and the priest says to him, do you renounce Satan? He's like, I renounce Satan. And really, he's like, you and me, Satan.
Yeah, well, I think, though, that...
But yes, you're right. There might have still been a shred of it left until
he's
part
doing
2.
what he needs to. What happens is, unlike Vito, Michael is too ruthless. The reason Vito Corleone is who he is because he has a heart. He never loses his heart. You know, and when I mean not like the Scarecrow or something or the Tin Man in Wizard of Oz, he's able to temper what he needs to do to protect his family with his heart. He doesn't lose the love of his wife. He doesn't lose the love of his fellow man. Michael doesn't know how to do both. All of Vito's sons are missing various components, and Michael does not have Vito's heart, but he has a ruthlessness and an intellect that is par excellence that allows him to do what he does. And at the end, he's a great statistician, and he's a great, because basically he's a military man. He's a wartime Don. What he can't do, he can't be a good, heartfelt man.
You know, speaking on that bruise, I'm kind of thinking that he didn't really put ice on it. he just let it be. Like he let it heal naturally. It might have been a broken orbital bone. We don't know.
I'm sure he broke his jaw. Like I'm sure he broke.
But we never saw him in the hospital getting it treated. He just took it like a man and just said, you know what?
To go.
I'm gonna wear these scars. They're like battle scars, right? And plus, it kind of showed me there are more important things that are going on other than his face. It will heal. You know what I mean?
And
he's living his life. He's not worried about that. Because even when he walked into the casino when he came back, the guy's like, look at your face. It looks good now. He didn't care.
Well, there's also a moment here about going on about Michael losing his soul. We often say that in the alley with his parents, Bruce Wayne died with his parents and the Batman was born, right? I feel like that moment for Michael, to a degree, was that moment at the hospital. When he's at the hospital and he realizes somebody's coming for his father. It feels like at that moment, that is where a fundamental change happens in Michael, both from his own perception of the world he lives in, but also in his soul, also in his disposition and how he chooses to then be and function in that. Because the Michael 20 minutes earlier in the film never would have said, arrange the meeting with Sollozzo. I'll go there. I'll shoot them both. Like, that guy was born in that moment at the hospital. You know what I'm saying?
But I would also go further, though, and to say that, you know, he was a military guy.
Right.
He'd fought in the European theater in World War II. He comes back and he saw that the command and control had failed the troops. So there was nobody there to command troops on the ground, and Michael, as a military officer, knew what needed to be done, stepped up and saved his father. And when he goes back, call it the European theater, when he goes back to Italy in hiding, when he sees, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, you know, he sees this beautiful girl, he does what he has to do, because now Michael is commanding troops in the field. He's gone back to wartime. He's now trying to survive. He's in hiding. And so he's back in the European theater, and he does what he's like, respectfully, I want to marry your daughter. All of those things were calculated moves the way a military officer would make them in order to strengthen his position. And all of that is showing how, like you said, John, he's calculating, but he's not doing it really with his heart. He's being a statistician, and he's using logic, but he's not doing it out of love or anything else. He's just strengthening and fortifying his position where he's at. And then when his wife is blown up and his bodyguard has betrayed him, he realizes, man, I have miscalculated. I missed things. I'm not seeing what I needed to be seeing. My guard was down. And that's all of this, all of the Godfather. His heart is being taken away piece by piece. And he realizes, I don't have the luxury of having a heart anymore. Because the world is a terrible place, and it's worse than it was when Vito was coming up.
That's was absolutely terrifying to me about Michael, was even at times where you would think there's gonna be some emotion coming out a little bit, it wasn't there.
Mm-mm.
When the lady died, when his father passed, he was a soldier to me through my eyes, all soldier all the time.
And what was the most rage he showed? Was against his own wife near the end, when he's talking to Kay, when he's trying to tell her, don't talk to me about you cannot ask about my family, about my business. And then he blew up at her. Right. And it's like, whoo. I mean, the fact that he's always so cold, calculated, calm, except for with Kay, and that kind of blows up. Listen, we got more to talk about here. We got much more to talk about. But before we keep going on here, we want to thank the sponsor of today's meeting of Movie Club, the good folks at Honey. Today's episode of Movie Club is sponsored by Honey, the easy way to save when shopping on your iPhone or computer. Guys, more and more we enjoy shopping online, whether it's on our phones or our computers. And how many times have you gotten to the checkout and seen that promo code box and thought, man, if I only had a promo code, I could save some money? Well, thanks to Honey, manually searching for coupon codes is a thing of the past. Honey is the free shopping tool that scours the internet for promo codes and applies the best one it finds to your cart. So here's the situation. You're shopping online on one of your favorite sites, and when you go to checkout, the Honey button appears, and all you have to do is click Apply Coupons. Then just wait a few seconds as Honey works its magic and searches for coupons it can find for that site that you're on, and if Honey finds working coupon, just watch the price drop. Recently, Ann and I were hanging out at home one evening and we decided to order in, and the honey button appeared. I was able to apply a coupon and I actually saved like $6 or $7. It was that easy to use. And Honey doesn't just work on your desktop computer, it also works on your iPhone. Just activate it on Safari on your phone and save on the go. So if you don't already have Honey, you could be straight up missing out. And by getting it, you'll be doing yourself a solid and supporting this show. Get Honey for free at joinhoney.com/movie club. That's joinhoney.com/movie club. And a big thank you to the folks at Honey for sponsoring this episode of Movie Club. Okay, guys, let's keep talking here. Then we're going to go over and start taking your live questions that you guys have been sending in. But let's fast forward through a number of things. We spent a lot of time talking on just the opening moments. Let's talk about, you can say this about 4 or 5 scenes in The Godfather, but truly one of the most iconic scenes in cinematic history. Michael arranges for the meeting with Sollozzo and the police captain. They meet in the restaurant. What's the name of the lieutenant who hides the gun or teaches him to hide the gun again?
Clemenza.
Clemenza. So teach him we're going to hide the gun, blah, blah, blah. He goes in, gets the gun, comes out, bang, bang, walks out. I mean, one of the more tension-filled, and here's one of the interesting things too. It's one of the few scenes in a movie where a plan is fully laid out for the audience. Here's what we're going to do. Our inside sources are going to find out where the meeting's going to be held. We're going to get somebody there first to plant a gun in. You're going to be frisked so you can't have a gun when you go in. You're going to talk to them for a while. Then you're going to say you need to go to the bathroom. You're going to go into the bathroom. You're going to get the gun. You're going to come out, bang, bang, drop the gun, leave. Whenever a plan is laid out in a movie, that's never how it goes. Something goes wrong. This scene went exactly to plan as they laid it out to the audience. And yet, every moment, every syllable spoken, everything was thick with tension and drama. And it was just so great to see. I loved it. And the coldness, again, we saw more of Michael's transformation in that. Ray, this was your first time seeing this scene. What did you think of the scene when you were watching it for the first time?
Don't mess with this dude. I mean, there is a new king in town. He's going to be away for a while, but everyone's in trouble. That's all I thought. I was actually terrified of Michael this whole movie. I felt more comfort with Vito. Like, it felt like if you're good with him, you're good. But with Michael, it felt like nobody, like, it was like walking on eggshells with him. You got to be very careful with him.
Even if you're family.
Yeah, even if you're family. And whenever that song would come on, I was like, this is the most mellow song, but I feel something terrible is going to happen.
Yeah. You know, what's really interesting at the beginning when we first meet Michael and Kay, you know, he's explaining everything about his father and his family. And Michael says, that's my family, Kay.
It's not me.
It's not me.
Yeah.
And another thing, there's details in this film. I love, John, the scene you just described when they're explaining this plan. And I love when Abe Vigoda, you know, as Tessio, is explaining, and
or
there's
Fish, as he's known in Barney Miller.
Yeah, and there's all these. He's explained the plan, and he's talking about the restaurant. Oh, I know that restaurant. And there's the details. Perfect for us. And he's like, good food. Like there's all the extra details, and it's that kind of dialogue, and it's the way. I mean, the casting in this, Abe Vigoda's face. I mean, one of the great faces that's ever been in a movie, and the way he speaks, you know, and when this happens, John, when it goes down, the violence in this film is not stylized. It's not Brian De Palma Scarface violence. Mm-mm. This is brutal. It's hard hitting. Like when you see the police captain going, you know, and after he's been shot, it's ugly. It's horrific.
It's traumatizing.
It's traumatizing, and this movie does not glorify violence, even though it's very violent. And you don't see that very often.
You know what also you don't see? A lot of movies, they like to fade out and then give you a timeline 5 years later. What I appreciate about this movie is the way the actors acted and their clothes told you enough about how much time was passed, which is something you don't see at all, sometimes never. From when Vito was in the suit, to later on, you see he was like more in the Mr. Rogers sweater.
Yeah.
And they didn't tell you 5 years later, 10 years later, but you knew he treated you like the director treated you like you're smart enough to get this
The scene
right.
told you. There's another good example of that is before Vito gets shot for the when he gets shot for the 5 times, right? It happens and like it's summer, there's a thing at the house. Then all of a sudden, it's a city street, there's snow falling, and you hear Christmas music in the background. And Kay and Michael are walking down the street. There was no 8 months later or anything like that needed. Coppola made the scene tell you that time has passed.
Yes.
You know, they did that with scenery. They did that with wardrobe. They did that with like all that kind of stuff is what they told you.
And acting, when Marlon Brando was in the room and he was older with the Mr. Rogers clothes, he was just looking through stuff like
acting
like
a little more frail,
like a little more order, like a little more forgetful. You know, just like not even worried about who's in the room. He's in there looking for something in the drawers. But yeah, you know, I just thought that was great. I think that was like it told you everything.
But even then, he's still thinking. He's like, when they come at you, you know, it'll be somebody
someone you trust.
somebody you trust, and he's imparting the knowledge. He's like, wait a minute, I got one more thing to tell you, and again. Not only does that scene lay out the strategy and what's going on, it's also a great moment between a father and a son.
Yeah.
It shows a familial bond that's going on between, you know, this very loving relationship between a father and a son, even though the father's like, one of your family members is going to betray you, just so you know.
And the one that comes to you meeting, that's your traitor.
Yeah. And
That's
also,
your traitor. Oh, and why did it have to be Tessio?
and also it showed you how much the ones who supported Vito were still not trusting of Michael at that time too.
No.
They were like, I don't want to answer to like who says he has the best strategy. We're going to get
worked for Vito for probably 30 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
These guys
we're going to get a race before we even get started. You know what I mean? But Vito's like, he's the head. If he's okay with it, then you have my blessings.
So then let's fast forward because we got to get over and
Right.
start taking other people's thoughts here. But let's fast forward to such an iconic ending, the dealing with the taking care of family business, right?
So good.
Mo gets it. Brazzini gets it. I want to get to who gets it last in just a second. But all these guys, what's the other name? The Tagli. I can't remember the name of the other family. It's freezing on me here. But
That starts with a T. Galiza or something.
Tagliani, whatever.
Or something.
They deal with him. They deal with all that kind of
Taglia,
stuff. Just that whole thing juxtaposed against this church scene with a baptism.
His son is getting baptized.
His godson is getting baptized. It's
Right.
it's Talia Shriver's son.
Right.
So they standing there as the godparents and all that kind of stuff. And it's just so powerful and great and wonderful and violent. Man, I think the most brutal one.
The eye.
Was that Mo? Was that
Mo Green,
Yeah,
yeah.
Mo
Green.
Green in
Alex
there,
Rocco
just laying
was
there,
Mo
and all of a
Green.
sudden the bullet through his eye, and it's like, this is pretty brutal. I mean, but there's something exhilarating about the brutality of it and the way he deals with it, and just in one definitive move. Again, like I said, he does something that Vito never would have done, and Vito maybe wouldn't have approved of. But it's done. And at that point, they've already kind of moved Tom out of the business, because now Michael wanted to do for Tom what Vito wanted to do for Michael.
Keep him legit.
Yeah, you got to be legit. You have to be the clean arm of the family now, even though you're not a naturally born son. You're a brother here, and you got to step out. So, but I got to talk about this. Not an important character in the movie. Let's talk about Carlo for a second. The sister's husband, who...
Well, he's important in the sense that
Well, yeah, I mean, there's an important role that he
caused
plays, but
Sonny
he's not
to-
like a big major play. He's not like a big character in the movie, right? But he does things in this movie that have major implications to the direction of things go. But look, there wasn't a single one of us when he's having his argument with his wife, and then he starts taking his belt off. I'm like, you son of a bitch!
I couldn't watch that. When you were in there watching it, I couldn't watch that scene again.
No, it's like, okay, like I think everybody's watching the movie's like, this fool's got to die. And let's put aside the fact that he's whipping on Vito Corleone's daughter, Sonny Corleone's sister, right? Take that out of it. That dude sitting on a bit and whipping on that woman. All of us are like, you know what it's like? It was like watching John Wick when guys were killing the puppy. You're just like, that motherfucker's got to die.
She was pregnant too, right there too.
And she was pregnant, and we're like, all of us are like, this guy's got to die. But even when Sonny showed up at the house once, and she's got the black eye, and she's like, no, it was my fault. It was my fault, which is so often abusers convince the people they abuse of that. It's like, no, it's my fault. But all of us are thinking he's got to die. And I remember watching this movie for the first time. As the movie progressed, like after Sonny is murdered and stuff like that, there's Carlo just sitting in with the family and stuff. I'm like, this motherfucker didn't get what he is coming to him? Oh, but Michael remembered. And he waited until after the baptism. And he went to him. It's like, no, it's okay. I'm not going to make my sister a widow. I'm the godfather of your son. Come on, man. Just, you got to admit to me. All right. Dead. And that was the most satisfying death in this movie to me was Carlo.
But I also want to point out when Carlo takes his belt off, he's doing this on purpose. He's escalating the situation because
but he was already an abuser.
Oh yeah,
right?
no, he was already. He's liking. Don't get me wrong. He's loving what he's doing, but he's escalating the situation because he knows she's going to run to her brother and call him, and he deserved to die too because he lured Sonny. He was paid by Barzini. He lured Sonny out, and Barzini probably promised him a position in their family. Even though, and one of the great things you learn about these movies, John, is if you show yourself as a sellout or a betrayer, you will die.
Someone will know.
That's why the people that love and trust you, if you sell them out. And what's great is you find more out about this in Godfather 2. He's a businessman. Everyone understands they're doing business. It's not personal.
Yeah,
it's business. But if you're going to do some business, loyalty versus business, that's something that goes on that is a thing throughout this movie. If you betray those that trust you, you will die. That is the big, because when Michael talks to his mother, I was worrying about losing my family. And Michael's talking about a different thing that his mother's talking about. Michael, you can't lose your family. And he's like, yes, but my family, like he's talking about a different thing that his mother's talking about, but they're both the same. And it's just this movie works on so many different levels is what makes it so great.
I just want to point out the two most traumatizing scenes will probably be stuck in my head is the killing of Luca Brasi. Braza. And the shooting down of Sonny. Those two scenes.
The shooting of Sonny was so brutal.
Because he was already dead, and the guy striped him one last time.
Yeah.
He striped him. He was dead. He wasn't moving. Striped him one last time. I was like, this is not...
And then kicked him.
We haven't talked enough about James Caan. His performance is ferocious.
Oh, my God. Well, look, whether we're talking about James Caan, Robert Duvall, Al Pacino... And we're lucky that all that main cast, including Diane Keaton, all that main cast, other than Marlon Brando, they're still with us.
Right.
I'm dying for them to do. I want HBO, even though it's a Paramount thing. I want HBO to do a Harry Potter style reunion 50 years later.
It'll be on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, maybe on Paramount Plus do that. I'd love to see them getting together and talk about this.
And the two times that actually brought emotion to me were the meeting where he talks about both of them losing each other's sons.
Their sons, yeah.
That was powerful. And him talking to the coroner was very, when he shed a tear, they massacred, look how they massacred my
boy.
Or even when he first found out about Sonny and he sheds a tear for the first time. I think it was where he really just shows the emotion of a father. Not the Don, not whatever anymore.
Yeah.
It's just the straight emotion. That scene was very powerful when he hugs Tom, when both of them hug. And they just let it out right there for a moment, and then back to business.
John, you brought up something I'd love you to talk about it more about. There's a scene in the movie where they have the meeting of the families after they've gone to the mattresses.
Right.
And you pointed out, I think, something that was really important that Vito does that Michael wouldn't do. And I think that's the crux of what's going on here, and it carries over into Godfather too. If you could sort of talk about that, because I thought that was really important.
Well, I mean, it sort of showed not only the difference in leadership between Vito and Michael, but Michael was now a Don for the changing times, because one of the themes that is introduced a lot in the first half of this movie is that times are changing. Times are changing. Tom said it. Sollozzo said it.
Let's sell drugs to kids.
Yeah, Brazzini said it. Like, it was always brought up that times are changing, times are changing, times are changing. And Michael kind of became the representation, I think, of what Vito Corleone needed to be now. And it was a far more cold, it was a far more brutal kind of leader. Because you're right, in that meeting, you know, Vito goes in, is like, you see when he's talking to Tom, right? When Tom tells him, he says, my wife is upstairs crying. I hear the guys coming in and out of the cars. It's time to tell your Don the truth. And he tells him what happens. And the very first thing Vito says is, I want no retribution for this. This war ends now. And he stands up and Tom puts his head on his stomach and he puts his hand on his head and they have that moment. And then that extends out into the meeting, right? Where he says, look, I swear I'm not looking for any vengeance for my son. Vengeance won't bring your son back. It won't bring my son back. It's done. And whatever. And that is, we can tell by the end of this movie, that is not what Michael Corleone would do. Well, and then you're right. We see that carry over into Godfather 2. That
in a big way.
In a very big way, which we'll talk about when we do Godfather 2
But I do
someday.
love that when Vito says, but if something should happen,
right.
I
That's
will
the part I was gonna
blame
bring up.
some of the men in this room. Like the lion comes out and roars.
And what's his
he
last
said,
line? That I will not forgive.
Yeah. If you guys touch Michael, if anything happens to Michael, that's the only thing that will break this truce.
Yeah. Like it's like, look, I'm the grieving father, but don't forget I am also Vito Corleone, and I will blame some of you in this room. These are dons. These are heads of the
I
five
think it's
families.
struck by lightning.
Did that meeting sort of in effect put all the family's guards down,
Probably.
ready for Michael? That's why Michael had it.
But also, it
Was it a
escalated
setup?
after that because it was after that Brazzini started making his moves and all that kind of
And
stuff, right?
that's another point of why the things changed. Is because I think Vito was more reliant on alliances, and then Michael was kind of like,
Because he believed in the
yeah,
peace.
they turned their backs on us too, behind our backs. We can't trust anyone except the ones closest to us.
He still believed in the old ways. Vito believed in the old ways. And like you said, times are changing.
Respect.
Michael understood that.
Vito was like, we create security by creating a respect and alliances and treaties and ceasefires to keep the peace. That's how we create security. Michael is kill all these motherfuckers and then we got security.
Yeah.
Because they're going to turn
We're
their back.
security if I just kill you all.
Because you
right?
can pay them off anyways. Like a lot of the people that were working for, you saw in the movie that they would turn their back for a dime.
They're all business.
yeah.
They're all
Yeah.
businessmen. They're all
Tessio
businessmen.
himself, like I never would have thought Tessio would turn. And yet Tessio turned. But again, he uses the line. It was just business.
He's a businessman.
It's a businessman. Anyway, guys, we could sit here and talk for literal hours more about this movie, but let's go over and hear what you guys are having to say about The Godfather, shall we? We're going to get things started off here with Sam Fisher, who wrote, I always thought Tom was consigliere because he was an outsider and he would be unexpected, but no, it's because he's basically an adopted brother. Well, it's not just that. He's consigliere because he's also maybe the smartest guy.
Right.
He's the lawyer. He's the guy, but he's not a wartime consigliere. And that became apparent and clear because his first reaction, which to us was the juxtaposition against Sonny, was take a breath. Our first move cannot be to pull out a gun. Michael realizes later on that maybe he was right a lot with Sonny and Tom in taking that position, but Michael knew I'm going into war and this isn't what you're built for, Tom. And we should protect you from this. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he was part of the family. So they trusted him, but it was also because he was just also maybe the smartest guy and a lawyer. And they showed that in the movie. All right. Logan James Kynaston writes, I went to my local Cineworld to watch this masterpiece. Seeing the greatest film of all time on the big screen was incredible. I was actually emotional. And I regret and lament, I've never seen The Godfather on the big screen. And I wanted to during its re-release. I never had the chance. I've seen it many times, but I've never seen it on the big screen. So, Logan, I am envious like crazy that you got to see it on the big screen. I still have not, but one of these days, man, one of these days I will. All right. Orange Hand writes, didn't like it. It insists upon itself, Lois. Oh, that's from Family Guy. Peter says, it's Peter, and I can't, was he talking about The Godfather? Oh, yeah, that's right. Peter in Family Guy talks about I didn't like it. It insists upon itself. And everybody's like, and meanwhile, the rest of the family has this big argument. It is like the greatest film of all time. What are you talking about? And Peter's like, no, didn't like it. Don't be a Peter, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be Peter. All right. Well, let's see. Logan James Cranston also writes, everything about it is perfect. Direction, acting, cinematography, etc. As soon as the score came on in the cinema, I had goosebumps from start to finish. I agree. Like the very first moments of this, where the mortician is petitioning Don Corleone, to the last moment of Kay looking in helplessly as Michael's closing the door, she realized she's married to a monster.
Bonacera, I think, is the name of the.
And by the way, Nick, I feel terrible for Kay, but at the same time, girl, he gave you all the signs.
Yeah, she was whooped on that for years.
The moment, first of all, when he leaves and never returns any of your calls or messages, and then when he comes back and she says to him, when did you get back? And he says, a year ago. At that moment, the moment you give him 1 second of your time after that, it's on you. That's your fault.
Well, I mean, I
known.
think that's all part of it as well. I mean, the fact that she's just as ensorcelled by the whole, for whatever reason, like Walt says, your guinea charm, that Johnny Fontaine came in and seduced this woman,
one of his girls, yeah.
That's all part of the whole thing. I mean, Mama Corleone, she was the nicest woman in the world, but she knew what her husband was doing, and we'll see in Godfather 2 that he was a provider. He was a provider, and I don't ask you about your business. You take good care of us.
Yeah, but you also know with Mommy Corleone, there's she stays out of family business. You don't F with Mama Corleone.
No, you don't.
That's
you don't.
Like my nonna. Like sweetest, most wonderful woman, 97 years old, still going, right? But you say the word Matamoska around my father's this big, burly, man's man, hard as iron kind of guy, right? You say the word Matamoska, and you watch my dad start to look around. Matamoska's a fly swatter. And my grandmother was a fucking samurai. with the fly swatter. When she would say, when you heard the word Madam Moses, even now today, I think I see a little bit of PTSD in my dad's eyes. That comes around. And that was Mama Corleone.
Yeah, throughout this film, I kind of wanted to be a part of the group, but as the guy that eats all the leftovers, because there's not one meal that I see anyone finish because they're either shot or they have to go do something, and everything looks so good.
Chef pleasures.
Yeah, I mean,
wasted.
I mean, when Tom was talking to the guy, they were eating with the Hollywood producer guy. He was eating. I was like, that looks good. I mean, come on.
How's your steak, Tom?
All right, let's keep going here. Next up, thanks for that a lot for that, Logan. City of Swift writes, I have 3 nieces and a nephew, and I'm not a godfather yet, man. This movie always reminds me of the God Pigeon from Animaniacs, which I watched before. But you got to remember, from the Animaniacs, you're talking about, because the God Pigeon was, I believe, a character with the Goodfeathers. And the Goodfeathers wasn't a play on Godfather. It was actually very much a play on Goodfellas.
Which is a Warner Brothers movie.
Yeah. What, you think I am a clown to you? Like they did all of that sort of thing, but that was more of a play. But yeah, they had the Godfeathers. Is that what they call them? Yeah, they had that in there too. All right. Next up, Hoop Suni writes, I haven't seen it yet, but I have a screening this Thursday in theater, so I'll definitely be back to watch the stream this weekend. Can't wait. And listen, Hoop Suni, I am green with envy that you're going to go watch it on the big screen the way it should be watched. I have never had that experience yet, and I really need to get on that. I hope you have a great time, and do come back and watch this video once you get a chance. All right, K. Nico writes, I love the chat between Vito and Michael. He truly didn't want this life for a son. And Ray, you were talking about that scene. As they're sitting there, Vito's no longer in the suit. He's got the cardigan. It's Mr. Rogers' time. He's grandpa now.
Right.
And sitting there, but still, he's the consigliere. And there's right before that scene, there's that scene where there's the head desk. Vito is sitting in the head chair. Michael is sitting off in the others. Mm-hmm. The other two, Tessio and Clemenza, are asking for permission to start their own family. Michael says 6 months. And then they turn to Vito, and Vito stands and paces and goes, Michael's the head of the family now, blah, blah, blah. Michael then stands, walks to the table, and he sits in the chair. And that's the moment, right? That's the moment. And then it's after that we had that conversation later on with them. But you're right, man. That was a beautiful, really nice, sweet scene about guys talking about murder.
Right.
And this is when they will assassinate you.
It's business.
It's business. Boo murder.
They're going to do this. You're going to be betrayed.
That's
and
all it
that's
is.
where you'll be assassinated.
It's not personal.
Good father-son chat. Good father-son chat. All right. Chef Rigo. How you doing, Chef? Chef Rigo writes in, not only was the movie great, but the video game was amazing as well. Was definitely a top 10 game from my childhood. I don't remember a Godfather video game.
I think it's PlayStation 2. I have it.
No.
Yeah.
I have a PlayStation 2 still.
Is it on PlayStation
Bring
now?
it.
Can I get it?
I don't think so, but there's a PlayStation 2 game.
But you know the service PlayStation Now where they got tons of old games?
They must have it. It must be out.
No, but I still have a PlayStation 2, so.
You have a PlayStation 2?
Well, I'll give you all my old PlayStation games.
Well, I want the Godfather for sure. Chef Rigo says it's pretty good.
Where is a PlayStation 2?
It's in the
your
garage,
house?
in the storage. In the
It
storage.
is?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Even Ryan still has one, so.
I should check that out. All right. Okay, next up. Thanks for that, Chef. Todd Kaepernick writes, in my 41 years on this earth, I have never seen this movie until a few weeks ago. I did it right. Drove down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and AMC, and experienced it in Dolby with an old college friend. Wow. Dude, you're not kidding. When he says you did it right, Todd. That's the way to do it.
How great would that be?
Because not only are you seeing one of the greatest films of all time, you're seeing it on the big screen.
With the new restoration.
With a new restoration on one of the best big screens, and you get to go with an old buddy to watch it.
Does he say what he thought about it?
Well, he just said, wow.
Oh, good. Okay.
You know,
I mean, wow is right.
I feel terrible, John. Like the past week when that actual movie came out in the theater and someone asked about it, I was like in my head, please don't buy me a ticket. Please don't buy me a ticket before it's on. Because that's something you would pull. You'd be like,
of course.
And me and Ray are going to go see it. At that time, I had my reservations about the movie. Now I kind of regret thinking that.
Yeah, I kind of wish we went to go see it in theaters. Oh, it's a long movie, but I do wish I'd gone see it in theaters. All right, Curtis Lopez writes, hands down, one of my favorite scenes in cinematic history is Vito's death. It's not bloody or violent. It's innocent and peaceful after he plays in the garden with his grandson. I heard somebody once talk about, there's a little bit of a spoiler alert for Godfather 3, but there's a similarity between the death of Vito and the death of Michael, right? Both quiet, doing nondescript things. But I disagree. There is a massive fundamental difference. Vito Corleone has retired. He's now seeing his son in a position of power. He's in a garden playing with his grandson. Mm-hmm. He has peace in his life.
Right.
And that, playing with his grandchild, he passes away. Michael Corleone died alone, miserable,
with no soul,
and no one. When you realize where he ended up. So yeah, they both died kind of quietly doing a nondescript thing, but they died in very different ways. Vito, I mean, we all die like Vito died, and not like the way Michael died.
That scene was tough a little.
And you know,
it was tough.
Yeah.
In Coda, the Coda version of Godfather 3, they changed that ending. And they made it, he doesn't fall over anything. He's just sitting there all alone. And then it cuts to black.
All right. Next up, we got Curtis again, who writes, the final shots in this movie are haunting and chilling, as we now see Michael truly embrace the life Vito did not want from him. Yeah, at that moment, as they come in, like Clemenza, a couple other guys, a couple of new faces.
Clemenza and Neri.
And they come in, they kiss the ring, and Kay's not an idiot. She knows exactly now what's happening. He has become what his father was, only a worse version of what her father is.
Yeah,
and she gets shut out.
One thing, when that door is shut, he shuts the door forever on his heart. I mean, love, what Vito had with Mama Corleone, Michael will never have. And that door shutting was definitive on so many different levels. And that last shot of her.
Yep. All right. Next up, Curtis Lopez again writes, both Vito and Michael got into the business for the same reason, hate and revenge. I disagree. That's not what prompted Michael into the business. Michael got into the business because he knew his family needed protecting.
Yeah, that's right.
He needed to protect his family. I mean, elements of revenge came into play, but Michael will tell you that wasn't revenge. That was business. if we're going to create security for our business and our family, these motherfuckers got to die. I mean, it wasn't so much he settled family affairs.
And there's also two parts, like a couple parts in the movie where it was mentioned that the Corleones don't have that muscle anymore. They're falling off.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that was in front of Michael, and that's another reason for motivation too.
Yeah, but Michael rebuilt. You could tell by the end of the movie, Michael had clearly rebuilt their strength.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
By the way, I just want to say this. One of the users in the live chat who's using the name Anakin Skywalker says, even I had a better death than Michael. As Anakin Skywalker.
Well,
anyway, sorry, Ray, what were you saying?
No, that's it. That's it.
Okay.
There's I felt that was a part of his motivation too.
Right.
To hear his family name was getting disrespected a little bit.
Right.
Or like,
he had restored the family.
And I would say that, spoiler alert for Godfather 2, but Vito is also protecting his family and protecting the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, Vito is stepping up and doing what needed to be done because no one else was capable. Young Clemenza wasn't capable. He steps up, and while he does take a certain kind of revenge later, that was something he did as icing on the cake. That was like, you killed my mother.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a little bit difference there.
You're going to fucking die.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Curtis also writes, the opening scene is also one of my cinematic favorites as the camera pulls away and focuses on the man telling the story about what happened to his daughter, to Vito. It's sad and chilling. And a couple of things get accomplished in that because it's not just, they could have opened this movie with somebody coming to Don Corleone who says, I want to take over this neighborhood. I need your help to take over this neighborhood. It's somebody coming to what, as we see the role of Godfather explained more in part 2, we're seeing the echoes of it first in this movie where people come to him with their problems, right? And the dude was coming to him with a true injustice of what happened to his daughter. And the guys didn't even get a day of jail sentence. And he says, I want them dead. That is not justice. Your daughter lives. You know, it's just that whole thing. And there's something really cool about that. And again, that opening scene, we've talked about several times here today, but that opening scene is magical.
But John, you know, you talked about how the beginning of this movie is all world building. You understand what the morality and ethics of this are.
Yes.
And they very much are there. These are not amoral people. They have a code that goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years that they adhere to. On the day of my daughter's wedding, I cannot refuse you a service. All very interesting.
All right. Next up, we've got Moat Awesome who writes, thanks for the best movie club community out there. Well, thank you so much for that, man. The Godfather is a top 3 movie for me. Tuesdays are more enjoyable because of you and your team. Oh, thank you for that. We're having, listen, we have a lot of fun, dude, because it's not often, hardly ever, if ever, do we get a chance on any of the other programming that we do, whether it's the John Campea Show or Mailbag or whatever, to just take a movie that we think is great, and as movie fans, just soak in that movie for a bit and just talk about that movie for an hour, hour and a half. We don't get a chance to do that ever. And Movie Club's given us that chance to do it. And I love it too, man.
Yeah, I just got really bummed right now for a split second because I just realized that I missed out my opportunity. I think they released Godfather Funko Pops and they might not be selling anymore. So I just got bummed for a second because I'm very selective.
Buy some of those.
I'm very selective on my Funko Pops now because of the room I have. And I'm like, I need to get one, but I think they came out a while back, so they're going to be pricey.
You can always find them.
Always find them. All right, next up. Daryl Best Wadley writes, I watched The Godfather for the first time 3 years ago, and I didn't get the hype. It seems super slow. Personally, Scarface and Goodfellas are way better. I don't get me wrong. I love Scarface. I do. And I love Goodfellas.
I haven't seen either one of them, so I
do.
can't compare.
And you really should watch Goodfellas. I almost said Goodfellas. Goodfellas. You totally got one. They're both great, but they are shadows of The Godfather. And that's not, I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. But those movies and several others like them are shadows in the glorious light of The Godfather. It's a different level. But again, all film is subjective, Daryl, and not all movies are going to hit everybody the same way. And if this one didn't work for you as well, then it didn't work for you as well, and that's totally cool.
You know, I would say that he just cited 2 other movies. Scarface is a pulp fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not, this movie, The Godfather, is cinematic literature. It's working on a number of different levels. Scarface, by the way, I love Scarface, but Scarface is working on a much more visceral, pop, violence, fun. Like it's a totally different kind of a movie, and it depends what you're looking for. And Goodfellas is somewhere in between the two. And I'm a huge fan of Goodfellas. I love all three of these movies, but I would look at them as different iterations of certain themes. And I think they're all very equal. But, I would say that if you're in college, Scarface is a frat party. Goodfellas is when you graduate after 4 years. And The Godfather is your PhD program.
And I will say this. I understand.
Masters.
I understand why he would think that way, but there wasn't really, if you look at the whole thing, there wasn't a lot of action, but everything before the action happens, the story that they're telling before it pays off when the action comes. For me, that's how I looked at it. It was almost like, here's the setup and here's what happens. Here's the setup, here's what happens. Sometimes people don't like that setup, just want that. Yeah,
sometimes, by the way, in the midst with that conversation of Goodfellas, I would also throw Casino in there.
I would too.
The Casino is another really great one. Like it's somebody asked us the other day, and we should have thought about this, but because I think we're going to start doing this for Movie Club. Somebody wrote in a suggestion the other day that when you end Movie Club, you should also do a segment of you should also watch. Well, those would be my three for this. Other than obviously Godfather's Part 2 and 3, I would also say Scarface, Goodfellas, Casino. Those are the ones I would say you should watch.
And those I'd also throw in. It's not as good, but I'd throw in Abel Ferrara's King of New York that stars Christopher Walken.
Anything more recent that you could suggest that even comes close to anything? That's nothing, like right?
Great mobster kind of.
The first season of Sopranos.
I mean, yeah, Sopranos was definitely that, but again, that's not a movie or whatever. I don't have to think about that. Right. All right, we got to keep going here. Next up, thanks for writing that in, Daryl. Irene Jobson writes, Hubs was surprised I'd never seen The Godfather when we first got together. It was one of the first movies we watched together in my apartment. I loved the second one and even Goodfellas. Thanks for doing this one. I mean, listen, it's like your first time. You always remember where you were when you watched The Godfather for the first time. I know exactly where I remember exactly where I was when I saw The Godfather for the first time. It's like, I mean, everything too, from going to the mattresses and sleeping with the fishes and all this terminology. And again, like I said, the eyes of people watching it the first time, they go, now I know where every movie I've ever seen got its influence from. That was it. And that is a great one, Irene, for you and your, at the time, would-be husband, soon-to-be husband, to watch together. That's a great
John, as you pointed out, one of the problems with our culture, whether you're watching Family Guy or Simpsons or any number of things, these kinds of classic movies become parodied because they're so recognizable. Every show does a Godfather parody. It doesn't matter. So the actual thing itself gets diluted as the years go by everybody referencing it. So when you actually go back and watch the original film that all of this is taken from, you expect it to be, I don't know, a burning bush. Maybe the 10 Commandments are supposed to rise up. And when they don't, it can't help but be a little bit of a disappointment.
It's true. All right, next up, we got Curtis Lopez, who writes, one of two. I remember seeing John Williams at the Hollywood Bowl. I was there for this. A few years ago, David Newman was conducted the orchestra and performing Nino Rota's score for this movie. He's done it actually a couple of times, like a couple of years in the last 5 or so. John Williams, which I go to this concert every single year, Ann and I do, but they didn't even introduce the piece. The screen went dark, light came up with a horn player who just started playing those notes. And the audience went nuts. Everybody knows. Anyway, he goes on to say, it was absolutely beautiful hearing it live, almost drew me to tears. No, it was great. And then they play this montage of the video to go along with the orchestra playing along with it. And it's just, again, like I said at the beginning of this, that's one piece of music from a movie that when you hear even a few notes, all the emotions and feelings you felt watching the movie flood over you. And that's one of those. I'm glad you were able to go to those, Curtis. I love going to those John Williams concerts.
They're so good.
I'm glad you get to enjoy them as well. All right. Chris Barcinas writes, The Godfather is the second greatest movie ever made, next to Empire Strikes Back. That said, The Godfather has the greatest opening to a movie. That opening monologue is amazing. And how many times have we heard people brought that up today already, right? That opening scene of that guy who later does get a call back. And he has a favor brought to him. And again, Ray, you're saying that it's so beautiful when all he wants as his favor in return is don't let his mother see him like this.
It was
Make him look better.
It was the most important part of the film for me because it brought me in right away. And for a viewer like me who has certain choices in what they like watching, that was very important for this film to do. And it did it. It did it really well because I was stuck there the rest of the night until I went to sleep.
Completely agree. And by the way, that's what an Italian wedding looks like. I'm just gonna
yeah.
And can we point out how different the two movies that he has at the top are? Which is great.
Empire and Godfather.
Yeah,
it's great to have that kind of mix.
There's so many differences.
You know, it's funny. I think one of the reasons I've always wanted to see a Star Wars. This is going to seem strange, but I've always wanted to see a Star Wars movie done like The Godfather with that kind of
I sort of hope
literature.
Boba Fett might be a little bit like that, but it wasn't.
I know.
Like at all.
I mean, every time I think about because Empire Strikes Back has a certain seriousness, but a certain literary quality to it. That's what I want from both Star Wars and Star Trek, because when I was a kid growing up, in my mind, they were just as important as this movie like The Godfather was.
Right. And they are. All right. Next up, Rob Fitz writes, one of two. Fun fact, the guy that played Luca was a wrestler. I knew this. I knew he was a professional wrestler.
What was it?
Chosen for his size. He delivered his line so badly in the opening with Vito that they shot the scene of him rehearsing to himself after that to make it seem like it was because of nerves. I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Crazy.
Hoping they re-release part 2 in theaters as well. If that is true, and I don't know if what Rob is saying here is factually true, but if that's true, that is a stroke of genius on Francis Ford Coppola's part. So you know what? This is coming off awkward. Let's throw in something that makes it look like it's supposed to be awkward. Like it's supposed to be awkward.
And he was the writer, co-writer of the film and the director, so he could do that.
Will that balance out the beatdown of Carlo in the street? The punches miss? Would that balance
Oh
that
my
out?
God, that was so bad. By the way, we never mentioned Luca's death scene.
That was brutal to me.
With the knife through the hand.
And the eyes turning red and popping out. I was like, oh my God. A part of it, I felt like turning away.
And that's another scene is they build him up. And when you meet him, he's built up as this formidable presence. You're like, no one can take that guy. And when
they had to sneak up on him.
And when they do, the peril is real. I mean, they really do a great job setting up the fact that there is real danger here.
You might be the mountain, but you're still mortal.
Yep.
And you're still a man. And guess what? This choke wire around your neck will do the trick.
And the knife in his hand, too. Holding him in place.
The knife through his hand was a pretty big deal.
He couldn't strike anyone.
All right, let's keep going here. Thanks for sending that in, Rob. That's really interesting. All right, Julian Mott writes, saw this movie in theaters this weekend. And wow, every time Pacino is on the screen, you could feel his presence. Brando is insane. This movie 100% holds up to this day in almost all aspects. 1,000 out of 10. That's the thing. You know, I just watched it again today. It absolutely holds up. And the reason it holds up is because it doesn't rely on big choreographed action sequences. It doesn't rely on glamorized, over-the-top kind of stuff, other than Talia Shire's acting sometimes. But it doesn't rely on that. It just relies on the narrative and the story. Here's what the characters do. Here's what the characters say. And here's what happens as a result of that. And because Coppola takes that approach of storytelling, it totally holds up, I think.
And not only that, the story also does another thing where it attaches you to the characters involved, to some of them. You have your favorites. You have the people you want to see die.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some sort of investment that the viewer is putting in this movie.
It's incredibly engrossing.
Yeah. All right, next up. We got, this one's good. Ty Burton writes, look how they massacred my boy. John talking about the Oscars this morning. Just picking one. What a great movie. That's how I feel. I feel like when I see what the Oscars is turning into right now, I feel like Vito Corleone looking at the butchered body and saying, look what they did to my boy.
Imagine Tom. Oh, you had your drink now. Tell me.
Yeah. No,
Okay. they got Amy Schumer as the host, and then John like, just someone lip sync that whole scene to the Oscars and announcing the host. That'd be so funny.
Time to tell your Don the truth. DJ Khaled is going to be presenter at the Oscar this year. What they did to my boy? What are they doing to my Oscars? All right, okay, let's keep going here. Next up, Yusuf Tafik writes, "Hey John, the opening scenes with Vito are fantastic. You really get a sense of how powerful and respected he is, and Michael's transformation is chilling. Love the show and keep up the great work." See, here's the thing: a really good movie will have a great hero's journey. Don't take hero out of it. We'll have a great transformative journey, right? What you really want in a really good movie is a character who is not the same person by the end of the movie that they are in the first. They go through challenges, situations, obstacles, and they come out changed.
100%.
Right? I feel like almost every key character in this movie is given that journey. Michael clearly is not the same guy at the end of this movie that he was at the beginning. Vito goes through his own journey at the time. Tom kind of goes through his own journey at the time. Fredo's Fredo. But, I mean, the fact that it's done with multiple characters is, I mean, a good movie will do that with your hero. A great movie does it with multiple characters. And that's what Coppola was able to pull off here. Actually, great thing to point out there, Yusuf. All right, Jillian Jackson Chubik writes, "I saw it in theaters." I'm so envious that you did. "I saw it in theaters this past weekend for the first time. I feel so grateful. Go have seen it on the big screens versus on TV. Oh, I agree. I mean, listen, don't be deterred from watching The Godfather on TV.
No.
I mean, if that's where you got to watch it. But my goodness, if you do get the opportunity, which I have missed out on every time, to see it on the big screen, don't be like me. Take the opportunity to go see it on the big screen. I still haven't had that experience. Jillian, I'm so glad that you did, and thank you for sharing that with us. All right. Josie Reviews writes, "I just watched this film for the first time ever in theaters over the weekend. So glad people are doing that. And there was something haunting and cold about the ending where you just see the door close." Mm-hmm. I mean, what's funny is that I think that scene, the way Coppola shot it and the angles and everything, we felt exactly what Kay was feeling.
100%.
We felt Michael was closing the door on us. We have come on this journey with Michael, and when he's closing that door on Kay, we feel like he's closing on us. And that was a great way for them to do that.
And he is. He is closing it on us.
And he will turn his back on us if we mess with him.
Well, he'll do. I mean, he'll be Carlo. He'll treat you like Carlo. He'll put you in a plane to the air. What? I was watching the movie. Okay, I was watching the movie before we started this video. I'm watching it again. And it's a good thing I already know the movie, because as Michael is sending Carlo, say, "Okay, we're going to take you to the airport," and Ray behind me. I forget Ray was behind me. He was sitting in the dining room behind me. Just go, "My guys are going to take the airport," and then Ray goes, "To board a plane to heaven."
You know, that part, it didn't surprise me. The one that did surprise me was the wife blowing up in the car.
That was so sad.
Yeah, I didn't think that was coming, because I thought she was coming to America and she's going to be the wife and there's going to be a struggle between the two women. But no, she's gone. No wonder she didn't speak a lot of English.
I mean, Apollonia's a redhead, man. That hurt.
And Michael never seemed all that broken up about it. He never mentioned her again.
Which was terrifying. Those things didn't affect him.
Well, he mentions her Godfather.
Yeah.
Well, I got Kay waiting for me in America, I guess.
But that was a tactical decision he made.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know,
tactical decision. All right.
He didn't even
Next
run after the
car. Let's see. Santos Hernandez writes, "For me, this is the greatest movie ever. I felt like I didn't know what film is until I saw this movie and was 20 when I first saw it. Truly amazing." I think it was Anne who once said to me, like, we watched The Godfather this one time, and I think it was her. She had seen it before, but I think she said to me, "You don't know what movies are until you've seen The Godfather." And at first, that sounds like a piece of hyperbole, but I think she's absolutely right. I don't think you fully know what movies are and what movies can be until you've watched The Godfather. And once you watch The Godfather, it completely redefines your understanding, I think, personally, from my experience, and I can only speak for my own, but it redefines your understanding of film and how you perceive film after watching this movie.
100%.
And storytelling itself.
Yeah.
Whether you end up liking it or not, I can honestly say that everyone should at least watch this movie once, just to take it in. Just to take it in. Whatever your outcome feeling is about it, it's up to you. But everyone needs to watch this at least one time.
Yeah, so agree. All right, next up, Alex Von Gollum writes, I love the subtle detail of Michael waving his hand a little before starting to speak, just like Don Vito did. That's you see the mannerisms he started to pick up of his dad, just like Don Vito, and also the brief glimpses of his future coldness that he displays early in the movie. Yeah, they give you very brief moments of that early, because he is his father's son. I mean, while he is the golden child, he is still his father's son. But you do recognize that in those little things, like the way he would, before, like somebody would say something to him before his reply, blah, 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 blah. And he starts to pick up those mannerisms more as he goes through that transformative stage. And that is a really good thing for you to pick up on, Alex. Like, that's a really key observation.
He's also, people forget, Michael's been to war.
Yeah.
He fought in World War II.
Yeah, he's not some new fresh lamb in the snow. Like, he's seen crap.
No, and they never say it. They allow the audience to infer this, but he's been through the shit.
There was one small scene that did it for me where I could tell how intelligent this guy was when they stood in front of the hospital and he was like, hold it like you have a gun.
Right.
They didn't have no gun, but he knew exactly how to scare them off.
All right, let's keep going. I think we're down to our last couple ones here today. DeWan writes, you guys are the best. Ray, you funny as hell. Well, thank you so much, DeWan. Thanks for being here and joining us for that, man. That's really kind of you to say. All right, and then the last message coming in here is from Ryan Lohner, who writes, the most amazing thing of all this is that Puzo's book is kind of, sucks. But Coppola made the greatest movie ever out of it. I'm going to tell you right now, I have never read the original Mario Puzo book. I have always heard it's not actually that good.
And is it this big too?
It's a tome.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it was developed with the studio. I think because when they were making it, Coppola, again, the idea that he wasn't making Puzo was writing a genre thriller. Puzo was writing Scarface. Coppola made King Lear. That's kind of the difference.
Great. And listen, guys, I also want to shout out to, while we were doing the show, Philly G, Emmanuel Aria, and Ethan Holgate all sent in super chat badges just to be supportive. Thank you so much for that, guys. We appreciate that. And that kind of brings us to the end of today's meeting of Movie Club, talking about The Godfather. I want to go around and just get final impressions again. Ray, you've watched the movie now. We've talked about it. Just your final thoughts on The Godfather.
This is a movie that will stick with me. I just like I was saying earlier, I'm an action guy. I'm a special effects guy. This is the first time I've run into a movie where it was like pretty much, to me, compared to what I watched, almost all dialogue, but all the dialogue brought me into the movie, which is kind of weird to me still. But I really like the movie. I can almost say I love it. I got to watch it one more time, which is crazy to me. But yeah, everyone should see it if you haven't seen it. And like I said earlier, no matter how you feel about it, it's very important. I feel I got smarter. Like, I feel closer.
That's what that movie does. Right? You feel smarter for watching the movie.
I feel like I always felt like an outsider on this movie talking show because I'm not the number one fan of movies, but watching this movie, I kind of feel closer to the community for some reason.
That's what movies do, man.
Exactly.
That's what movies do. I love the way you just said that.
Like, it was like my initiation into this special group that like I feel like I could talk. I get all the Godfather references now.
Ray?
Like when I walk past Hot Topic and I see a Godfather shirt like in the window, why do people love that? Well, there's too much Godfather. Now I'm going to go buy that shirt and buy everything I see with Marlon Brando because he took the cake right here. His acting, oh man, it was so good.
So now you'll know whenever I'm talking and I say to you, Ray, never side against the family. Now you know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't know, Ray and I are family, actually. We're literal family. Rob, what about you? Your final thoughts here on The Godfather.
Well, I think that this is the perfect fusion between the art of cinema and literature. And I don't mean because it's derived from a book. I mean that the storytelling in here has a depth, and it has meaning that so many movies aspire to, but never quite hit that mark. And this is a brilliantly produced film, and there's a reason why it looms large in the history of cinema.
I agree. It's hard to say, but it's a perfect movie. Just a damn perfect movie. And guys, that will bring to a close this meeting of Movie Club. Thank you so much for being here, guys. And I will now tell you what the next meeting of Movie Club is going to be. Prepare yourself. Do your research this week. Get ready, because I got a good one for you guys. Man of Steel. We are going to talk about the most underrated comic book film of all time. I've had a number of people asking me, begging me that we do this particular film. And so, yes, next week we will be doing Man of Steel. Might as well get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way, baby.
You guys know I'm going to do a Man of Steel movie club, so we might as well get it out of the way and do it next week, and that's what we're going to do. I hope you guys will get ready, prep for it, and we will talk all Man of Steel next week. I want to thank the guys sitting around the room here with me. First of all, Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at RM Burnett, find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work.
And of course, Ray Ora, my brother-in-law, my own
The head of the table, Ray Ora with a 0, baby.
And you guys can simply follow me on Instagram or on Twitter. You can see it right here. There is it right there, at John Campea. Guys, don't forget, come on back and join us for the John Campea Show tomorrow. I think tomorrow is going to be a big one. I've heard a little something about something kind of big dropping. So yeah, so just make sure you guys come back and join us for the John Campea Show tomorrow. But guys, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Click the thumbs up. And by the way, in case you don't know, there is a podcast feed, an audio-only podcast feed of Movie Club. Just go onto your favorite podcasting app of choice and search for Movie Club, a John Campea Show podcast, and subscribe to it. And you can start listening to past episodes or whatever, or watch the videos on the YouTube channel, whatever works for you. Okay, guys, that'll do it for us for now. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, Movie Club out.